Welcome back to another video. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you, you can probably already tell, I'm a little under the weather. I've definitely caught whatever the seasonal fun time illness is, and I feel pretty rough. But that's not gonna stop the fact that it's Tutorial Tuesday. Welcome back to Tutorial Tuesday, where each and every Tuesday we bring you a brand new, fresh photography tutorial. Why am I laughing? Because my voice sounds awful. Let's jump into Lightroom Classic, where we're going to take a look at this photo. Now, this is taken on the Canon R6 III, and this is something that might happen to you a lot with wildlife photography in particular. You can't really control that natural light. Natural light can be difficult to work with because, just like here, we've got bright light behind, dark light in front. There's a few different ways we can look to solve this problem. Of course, we can increase the overall exposure of the photo, but that's not going to do much for our Robin friend here because the background is so bright. This does not look good, right? That's not going to work. We can bring the highlights down and the shadows up. That can kind of work a little bit, but we end up with a reasonably sort of flat photo. Maybe combine that with a bit of exposure coming up. That doesn't look too bad, but again, it's maybe not ideal, so we'll reset that. Clarity might help a little bit, texture might help a little bit, and we can also come in here and use a mask on the subject. Lightroom's identify the subject and actually just boost the exposure of just our subject there. Now, again, that's not the worst, but it doesn't look particularly true to life, right? Realistic. So again, there's probably more we'll need to do with that. So let's just go ahead and reset the whole photo and start from scratch. What we want to do really is shape the light around our subject so that things feel a bit more natural and we get the end result that maybe we saw when we were there with our eyes and that we know is capable of coming out of this photo. Now, another important consideration, I'm actually working with a JPEG here, so we're not going to be able to push and pull this as much as we would with a raw photo, but even so, there's a lot that we can still do. So I'm going to bring the shadows up a little bit. I'm going to bring the highlights down just a touch as well. I'm going to bring that contrast up just a touch, a little bit of clarity, a little bit of texture. I'm going to bring the vibrance up as well. Then we are going to go straight into masking. So I'm going to go ahead and do just what we did before. Get a subject mask going. Let's bring the exposure up on that. So something like this, right? And I think that's actually looking quite nice. Let's go ahead and bring a linear gradient in. And I'm going to bring this in from the bottom up. Something like this. And I'm going to right click on this mask, intersect mask with select background. That means it's going to go behind our subject. There we go. I can bring that exposure down a touch, something like that. Let's do another one, another linear gradient, this time from the bottom left. Again, intersect mask with, actually, you know what? Let's bring this in from the bottom left. Let's not intersect that mask with the background. Let's just darken that a touch, something like that. Let's go ahead and do a radial gradient now, something like this across where our subject is, and just brighten that with the exposure coming up a touch. Then we're going to go ahead and do a linear gradient coming in from the top right, so opposite to what we did just before with the linear gradients. And I'm going to bring this up with the exposure. The dehaze, we're going to go a bit of negative dehaze there. And I might even just warm this up a touch as well, something like that. Okay, that's looking pretty nice. Let's bring a linear gradient in now, something like this, but let's intersect this one with the subject. And what that's going to do is give us, let's just see if we can bring this, make this a little harsher, little less soft. There we go. And if we were to bring that down in exposure, we add a bit of shadow to the underside of this branch and actually to the robin as well, which just gives a little bit more dimension to the light around that. Okay, let's do one more radial gradient, something like this, up at the top right there. Again, I'm going to bring the exposure up a little bit, warm that up, and then come down and do some negative dehaze. This way, we end up with a light source at the top right, some darkness shaped around here, but we've got a nice, clear, defined subject. Let's look at a before and after by pressing the # key on our keyboard. So this is where we started. Actually, arguably, it's brighter on the bottom left here. This is where we've got to now. That's looking pretty good. I might come in and bring the overall exposure of the photo down just a touch, something like that. Maybe the highlights down just a touch, maybe not too much. But something like that I think looks probably pretty good. Might bring the contrast up just a touch as well. Maybe a little bit more clarity as well. There we go. Okay, that looks pretty nice. Let's actually come down here now to the hue, saturation, and luminance sliders. This is the color mixer. Let's go over to hue. Now with this one, I'm going to just richen up all of the colors. So the orange I want to bring down towards a kind of burnt orange, the reds a little bit. The yellows I might bring that over to the left a little bit. There's a shot in sort of autumn time, so we want to make sure we're bringing those colors out. Let's bring the green, you know what, a little bit more towards the green side actually, less towards the yellow, more towards the rich green, just because we get those nice colors there. That looks really pretty. And we can come into the saturation. I just suck some of the orange out, a tiny bit of yellow as well. Maybe just a tiny bit of green. I think that's looking pretty good. Let's look at before and after again. So that's looking, I think, actually really nice. You know what we could experiment with? Another mask, a radial gradient around our subject, something like this, a nice big one. We can invert that and then bring the exposure down. That's going to help focus the light here onto our subject. Again, a before and after. That's before. That's after. It's very sort of, we've got some nice rich colors there. We've got some beautiful light. I'm pretty happy with how that photo has kind of come out, actually. So I would probably say that this is pretty much fixed. Before and after, we've certainly brightened things up, but in a much more natural, realistic way, in a way that feels a little bit more kind of true to life. This looks much more like it looked to my eyes when I was shooting it than the actual photo does, where it's like this, right? That's just an unfortunate situation, difficult light to work with. We've captured it the best we can, and we fixed it in post, which I think is probably the best possible outcome that we could get with this photo. I'd love to know, would you have done anything different with this photo? Would you have maybe changed the way we light it? Would you have done something different with the colors? Or would you simply come back another day and try and shoot in different light, different conditions? Something that is interesting in wildlife photography is rather than actually chasing the bird, like I've done here, we can actually focus on an area of good light and wait until a bird naturally flies into that area. Patience is the name of the game when it comes to wildlife photography. So that could have been one way we could have handled that. But you know what? I'm pretty happy with this photo as an end result anyway. So I think that, all things said and done, it's all good practice, and we come out with a nice photo like this one. Of course, you can check out a full list of all the kit we use for these videos, including the Canon R6 III, the video stuff we use for all this stuff, by checking out the links down in the description, all take you through to parkcameras.com, where you can see all of the specs and all the fun stuff you might want to see. If you've got any suggestions for future Tutorial Tuesdays, let me know in the comments, because that's always interesting to see as well. Otherwise, all that's left for me to say is I'll see you in the next video. But until then, as always, thanks for watching.